Got a couple of cool things to bring up before we start the show. The first is that I've got another response to a pair of prompts that I gave. This one was for the category of scientific discovery. The prompts were inspect safety, and the response I got was from Lemund. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Lemund writes, a major breakthrough in understanding the chaotic energies that permeate the Forge. Star systems can now be analyzed from a distance in regards to what anomalous hazards one might encounter near the drifts. Now, that sort of technology would certainly be helpful in a lot of what we're going to be diving into kind of right away with Emile here. To be clear, this breakthrough has not yet occurred in the universe of this game, at least not to Emile Spencer's understanding, so he still has to do this all the hard way, but the idea of being able to, at a distance, maybe even as far as like another sector away, be able to know like what are the dangers up ahead, that could be huge. So thank you, Lamoon, for your contribution. I always value getting to hear the various creative things people get to come up with for that. However, there is a second thing I did want to bring up before the show, which is a little bit of a tease, because I don't have the full information just yet, but I am fortunate enough to be scheduled as a guest on the Solo Roleplayers podcast. That is a podcast that covers all things solo roleplay, not only some actual play examples of all sorts of solo role-playing games, and games just being played solo even if they weren't originally intended that way. Not only does it cover that, it's got all kinds of interesting interviews with other people in that kind of sphere, both people who write solo games and people like me that are just doing actual plays of various solo role-playing games. It's a really cool podcast. I rather enjoy it. PJ, the host, has an amazingly soothing voice, so you should really check it out for that reason alone. I don't know the exact date that my episode is going to release. In fact, we haven't yet recorded it, but we do have the date penciled in, so I'm very much looking forward to getting to be a guest on that show. I'll have more details as we get closer to it, but eventually you will get to hear yours truly on that podcast. And depending how far into the future you're listening to this audio right now, it may already exist. So, once again, the podcast is called the Solo Roleplayers Podcast. Check it out. I've got a link in the show notes. But for now, let's start my podcast. Stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series. Well, there's not really much of anything to recap from last time because we didn't do anything especially narrative last time. Episode 13 was kind of a narrative break from everything, having reached the end of an arc. We did more just background and world building type of stuff. Now, as for what specifically happened, we introduced the concept of threats, which is something from the Ironsworn supplement Delve. We're now going to be having Valkyrie as a background threat, working against Emile's goal to make amends to the people of Concord with a gift of a power core. Now, there's a little bit of a timer on that where Valkyrie will be advancing her agenda to have Emile assassinated by having put out the word to the rest of the Vault Hunters that he was an enemy of their people. In addition to that, we learned a fair bit about Hyperion. It is something of a cross between a space station and a ship, in that it is a space station that slowly moves locations over time. And we learned about Emile's contact there, a robot lawyer named Deuce that Emile has a bit of a history with. Turns out Emile used to work for the tech company LazTech, which Deuce still represents, and had a bit of a falling out. Seems he was rather encouraged to leave the company when he was getting a little bit too loose-lipped about some things that they would like to keep more secret. That same tech company, LazTech, is currently at odds with the people of Hyperion, who are a lot more of a not exactly lawless people, but certainly a people that lack any manner of structured authority to them, and LazTech believes that their whole society is built off of proprietary LazTech technology that was contained within the various ships that were cobbled together in order to make this mobile space station. But none of that stuff is currently top of mind of Emile Spencer. That was just world building so that we would know a little bit more about what might be coming up for Emile. But let's get back into that. So Emile spent a long time recovering in orbit around Cinder. And when we come back, it's probably been several weeks of recovery using the med bay, several weeks of getting to know a little bit better how to have effective communication with Fern. I feel like during that time, Emile and Fern would get down to like little bits of shorthand, where we know that Fern has often taken something of a more humanoid form as best as possible, and then used the color shifting ability to make, symbols and expressions on their face. And I think over the course of these weeks, they've gotten a better ability to in fact, why don't we start this off with a little bit of a vignette. During this vignette, I think that Emile is indeed just like hooked up to a machine in the med bay that's, I see it like it's basically he's got an IV in, and that's connected to some kind of terminal on the wall, and the liquid that's running through into him is some kind of way to boost how quickly his body is going to build back the additional skin layers that he's missing from the caustic atmosphere of Cinder. I don't know, I'm no doctor, but he's got some kind of medicine going in to help him heal a little bit quicker. And while he's lounged in a chair, keeping his arm propped up on some kind of a thing while this IV runs, Fern is on the other side of the room, looking much better in their own right already from having been shot when they were on Cinder. There are probably some sections of Fern that I see it almost like dead pixels on a TV screen, where there are areas where there's just like some permanent color change that Fern can't really control anymore. Like all of Fern's body has that kind of hypnotic lava lamp and shifting color look to it. But there is this patch that's grown a little bit smaller, but perhaps it is kind of like a scar that'll never fully get back to the same kind of color shifting as before, where there's just this sort of dead pixel area where certain colors are not shifting through nearly the same number of hues as the rest of the kind of undulating body. And so it makes almost like a little bit of a shadow that'll never be quite the same. And so Emile is in there. It's almost like somebody who's just waiting as they go through like dialysis or chemo or something, where this process that he's going through is just, it takes hours and it's a very boring process. And so the two of them have taken during these times to playing a little bit of a communication game. It's almost like a little bit of, it's like they're playing charades, where Emile has to guess what concept Fern is representing through these symbols and color changes and the sort of just general behaviors and that it tries to emulate, even though any limbs that it would have in its more humanoid form move much more fluidly and slowly than a person regularly would. But we see Emile there just trying his best to guess through like what Fern is trying to represent right now. And he's like, let's see. Well, I know you've previously used that to indicate nervousness, and you seem to be making like some kind of, you like stood up taller and got really big, and then you went over there and were smaller and made the kind of nerve. Oh, is it about the bigger form? And Fern gives like the kind of agreed upon thing that they already know is a yes. Like that's been baseline for a while now. And Emile goes, "Oh, is it like some kind of a, is this like a monster? Is that what you're representing?" And Fern like excitedly does the yes very, very brightly. That it's like, yes, you've got it on the nose. And they finish out the round and have a good time. And we just kind of see this moment where we see Emile and Fern go through a few of these, clearly in much better spirits than we last left Emile. He seems like his regular self again. He's looking good. He's laughing. Fern's having a good time. And we just, we have this little moment where we go through a bunch of them, and Emile gets faster and faster over time. Like, perhaps some of these are on different days, in fact. But we just see this montage of different moments where Emile gets better and better at more quickly understanding this sort of like private language the two of them have. I'm hoping that over time, it'll be almost like Han Solo and Chewbacca, where Emile will just inherently know everything that Fern is representing without issue, even though he couldn't possibly do it back. And so I believe what we've really done there in this begin a session move is we've spotlighted not a new danger or insight, but an opportunity. And that opportunity is indeed just this greater, more specific communication that Emile and Fern are being able to develop. It's no longer just very, very broad strokes ideas. It's starting to get down to a little bit more subtle language that they can share, and share in their own kind of, well, sign language. Apparently that's been a big thing this game. As a result of that vignette, let me give myself +1 momentum. As we go back, after that scene ends, eventually we come back to Emile now, who is just starting to wake up from whatever quarters they've got on this ship, going through sort of morning routine stuff, just literally just brushing teeth, putting clothes on, all of that. Meets Fern out in one of the hallways and says, "I think today's the day. Let's work on getting you home." Fern immediately shows a good deal of excitement at this idea and starts just kind of hustling down the hallways towards the cockpit, just kind of like, and as quickly as lava lamp goo can move, just clearly making a beeline for there. And just Emile has a bit of a chuckle and goes, yeah, wait up, even though Emile is clearly able to go significantly faster and could bypass Fern if he wanted to, but makes a show of staying behind and has a bit of a laugh, and Fern puts on a mock irritated face for a moment. They both kind of plop into their seats. Emile in the pilot seat and Fern taking on the hominid form just so that it can sit in a co-pilot's seat and look out the front bay window and really see all of what exactly Emile is doing. Very interested as well, because while it learned, the thoughts and knowledge of Emile when Emile was in their body, it's missing that kind of practical experience. And so it's very interested to see flight actually in action and not just thoughts on the idea of flight a little bit more. And so mechanically, we are currently in orbit around Cinder. In this sector, there's another settlement known as Hyperion, which is where I would like to get. Now, we do not have a charted out course from Cinder to Hyperion. When I was making the starting sector, that was not a thing, which means in order to get there, we're going to have to do this the hard way. Specifically, we're going to have to undertake an expedition because we are trailblazing a route through perilous space. Now, of course, if I wanted to, we could skip this part and just have him get there, but I'm curious to see, even though I don't think it'll be a huge distance or anything that long, I do want him to actually undertake the expedition. So let's see, we give the expedition a name and a rank. This is going to be from Cinder to Hyperion. Now, I don't imagine that there's anything that bad between the two spots, but I'm going to put this at dangerous rather than just troublesome. I feel like troublesome is so short that it really verges on should we have even done it for this kind of journey. Like, it may not have enough time to really have any obstacles come up, whereas once we get to a dangerous journey, it seems a little bit more likely to actually have something happen. And then on a more metagame level, if I do a dangerous journey, I will fill another discoveries box because I have 2 ticks in a box, whereas if I just did troublesome, I would not. But it really is mostly about just troublesome feels like I want a little bit more bite than that as we get back into the narrative. Hopefully this will inspire some things. So let's determine our approach. We are either moving at speed, keeping under the radar, or staying vigilant. And we're definitely not specifically keeping under the radar from anybody, so it's definitely not Shadow. It would either be moving at speed or staying vigilant. I don't believe... Emile doesn't have any reason to think that he needs to be especially speedy at this. He's not trying to beat anybody there or beat any particular clock he knows of. He's not really that... He got that radio signal last time, but doesn't know exactly what it was. does not know that there might be people coming and hunting for him. Which if he did, he'd probably be more keeping under the radar than moving at speed. But anyway, let's do this as stay vigilant. He just wants to be aware of what all is around, so we are going to roll wits. And just checking really quickly to see... Nope. I don't have anything in my new Starship assets that are going to help me on this, so it's just a straight wits roll. Let's see what we get. Alright, starting off with a weak hit. So you reach a waypoint, but this progress costs you. Envision the location and mark progress per the rank of the expedition, but choose one. Suffer costs en route. Make a suffer move -2 or 2 suffer moves -1. Or face a peril at the waypoint, envision what you encounter. I think let's face a peril. Just to give some kind of tension to this all and have it not just be dice roll after dice roll. Let's give a little bit more context to what's happening here. So first off, before I do any of that, let's find out a little bit more about what this waypoint is. So in order to inspire that, I'm going to roll for a space sighting in the Outlands, which is, I believe, where I determined this sector would be. So that gives us a stellar object. So we actually wind up, so on this route through the sector, we wind up near a sun, and it is apparently a burning yellow star. And now let's find out a little bit more about what kind of peril might be happening as we're going near this yellow star. So in order to do that, we are going to use the Spaceborne Peril Oracle. So let's find out, what do we have here? I don't think I've ever actually rolled on this table before, and this first one is Contagion or Illness Threatens to Take Hold. Ooh. That is interesting. We could make this related to the radiation. Like, we've still got the... We've never really resolved... Like, even though Emile has healed himself, I definitely don't want him to just be utterly done with any of the effects of having the radiation from that, like, mantis creature on Cinder. So let's have this related to that illness. Let's have another... Should it be another manifestation? Or, like, No, let's have another moment of this EMP problem that they've got. That it's, like, threatening to... He can, like, feel it welling up or something like that. That it's something like the feeling that he had before last time, where it gave a great big EMP burst. And, of course, if that were to happen right now, while if he somehow disabled the entire ship, that could be a real problem. And perhaps it's even that it's because of this increased proximity to this burning yellow star that it's like, it's setting this off inside of him. Like, the radiation from the sun is, it's helping, it's making this well up a little bit more. And so Emile knows that if he doesn't do something about this, soon there's an EMP blast is going to come out of him, and that could utterly screw over this ship. Depending on exactly where he is when it happens, maybe he would never even recover from it. So now that we know all of that, let's mark progress on the expedition, now that we know what the problem is. So Emile is sitting in the cockpit, just getting... At first it starts with him just, like, shielding his face from it a little bit more. Like, I feel like the ship is set up so that you can indeed fly this close to the sun if necessary. Like, he comes out of this sort of hyperspace lane from a jump, and the computer slows him down because he's about to pass through the area where there's this giant yellow sun. And for this section, there's no way to just do it through hyperspace. Like, you have to just kind of manually get around it for a bit. And while he's moving to the cockpit in order to do that, he's feeling like, despite the shielding that allows you to deal with such brightness and heat and all of that, it's getting to him more than usual, and it's coming from the inside. He feels this kind of energy welling up as he even looks towards it, and his body's shaking a little bit, and he realizes this is a familiar feeling. This is what he had before the EMP burst, and he knows that he needs to make sure that does not shut down the ship. Like, it's okay if it lets out, as long as he needs to either stop it from bursting out, get to a part of the ship where that won't be a problem, or at least will only cause minor problems, or get himself away from the ship. Now, he doesn't have any kind of, like, exosuit or anything like that. We don't have any additional vehicles in the bay that would allow him to just get away from the ship as best as possible. So that last one does not sound like that doesn't sound like something we're going to be able to pull off. So I think the next best thing is going to be, let's see if we can get Emile to an area where, like, if he just gets out away from the cockpit where he's most getting bombarded by this vision of the sun and everything. Maybe if he gets away, he can cool it back down and tamp this back down. So I think the first thing is let's try and secure an advantage. Basically, this is going to be buying time by just getting to a spot on the ship that where, like, the walls are a little bit thicker. There's certainly not just the glass out where it has a view of space. He's getting into, like, the guts of the ship where there's, like, maybe a little bit more armor. Like, yeah. The most stable areas that have the most thickness to survive blasts, which would probably actually it could well even be something like the med bay, just to make sure that if there were a patient in there, they would be more safe from kind of the worst of getting hit by weapons from the outside. We're going to secure an advantage with wits because this is indeed about the expertise of knowing what part of the ship would be the most shielded from the outside like that in a quick fashion. So secure an advantage with wits. And we get a strong hit on that. So I succeed, taking +2 momentum, and we get to add +1 on our next move. So Emile hustles in there while, it's almost feels like he's got this kind of like a food poisoning, like just this wrenching feeling inside that he's trying to keep contained. He's a little bit doubled over in there, but it gets a little bit better when he's in this room. He still doesn't feel like he's gotten it fully taken care of, but he's bought himself a little bit more time and a little bit easier of a headspace to be able to work. So what's one face danger? Oh, and so I think what this is going to be a face danger where if he can shut down all of the computer systems from a terminal in here, he could let the EMP blast go and it would be fine. Like if everything's off, it would be more likely to be okay when that happens. And of course, that means shutting down all systems, including life support and everything. So he would need to be ready with like oxygen in here or something. So it's a good thing he's in the med bay. That seems like a place where they might have like an oxygen mask. And I think that this is the moment, like, Fern is, like, catching up behind him as he's, like, rummaging around in this room, trying to get everything he needs to make this work. And Fern has a great confusion on their face. And Emile says, don't have a lot of time to explain, but I think I'm about to... Magnetism, the EMP blast, I think it's about to happen again. I need to shut everything down. You can help me. How about you... I need you to stay by. If this doesn't work, I need you right here to help me out. Maybe I don't want to rely on it, but maybe you'll be able to help me contain a little bit of the blast if you're prepared for it. I don't know. I need to work on this. And so he's on the computer and he's just logging in, trying to, as quickly as possible, shut down all the like ancillary systems, certainly anything navigation wise or that controls the engine. Getting everything except life support down first, and then finally he'll give the warning and then shut down life support. This is going to be a face danger with edge. However, I think this would indeed benefit from his tech move because he is configuring an electronic system. Configuring or disrupting, really, depending on your perspective. But I get a +1 from that because that's what he's good at. The secure an advantage will give me an additional +1. But I am going to make myself roll this with edge, not wits, because I think really the speed at wit, like, he knows how to do this. His wits aren't the determining factor here. He's well acquainted with this sort of system. It's all about how quickly can he do it. So the speed is enough the factor. We're going to roll edge with a +2. All right, getting another strong hit. So we are successful. We take +1 momentum. And importantly, so yeah, Emile shuts everything down, and he feels it coming. He's, like, taking some deep breaths and calming himself. And, like, he's got the oxygen mask on, and has given the warning to Fern, like, I think it's almost coming. He's trying to... Actually, no. I don't think he's zen about it because I haven't given myself like a move to really reach that point. And he doesn't know exactly what it's going to be like yet. So he's a little bit nervous, feeling like it's like when you're in front of a toilet and you know like, oh, okay, now I've been waiting here. I've needed to throw up, but here it comes. It's coming. Gives that warning to sorry to be gross about it. Gives that warning to Fern like, I think this is the moment. See if you're able to contain it. And I'm actually going to do this as a gather information move because I think this is like a kind of doing research. We're going to make a wits roll here because we're going to try and learn if it came to it, like could Fern in the future help him contain these EMP blasts when he doesn't want them to happen. And so because we're doing this through the help of our connection who is basically using the ability to manipulate metal. Actually, no. It's not manipulating metal. It's related, certainly. It's magnetism, but because I specifically said what Fern could help me with is manipulating metal, not just magnetism in general, I'm not going to get Fern's +1 from this because it's a little bit too outside of the wheelhouse. But we still get our +1 from the strong hit that we just had. And we're gonna try and gather information and see, putting this to the test, could Fern help him out? All right, getting a strong hit. So we discover something helpful and specific. The path you must follow or action you must take to make progress is made clear. Envision what you learn and take +2 momentum. I think in this case, yeah, what we learn is that yes, Fern could, however, it takes basically making it a dome completely around Emile in order to do it because it's coming from all angles. So they learn that it's possible, but only under just the exact kind of situation where almost like one of those domes you put over an exploding bomb in order to let it go off safely. Fern has to make one of those over Emile. So it may not always be viable, but they do learn a specific way that like, yeah, Fern could stop that from happening. And then after it happens, like there's like a tingling that happens through Fern as Fern tries to keep it contained, but is able to do so. Slides back off and uncovers Emile, who is like huddled underneath with this with the oxygen mask on. Now that speed isn't a factor, he's definitely able to get the systems back online, turns it all on. Because we were successful, everything turns back on just fine. Gets life support back on, is able to take the mask off, and says, all right. You know, I think the anticipation was worse than the actual feeling. But man, it would really be nice to be able to figure out how to stop those. Or, I mean, equally nice to be figuring out how to make them happen. Seemed like the sun had something to do with it. Well, stay nearby. We may have to do that all over again. Actually, let me see if I can pilot this from here. I don't want to risk getting back towards the window. And again, Emile, because he's not on the clock or anything, Emile is savvy enough with computer systems that I think he can rig up some way to indeed get the next, like, do some slow, crappy piloting even from the computer that's here inside the med bay. It's got like a delay to it, so it's not nearly as good. You wouldn't want to do this unless you have to, but because he feels like he kind of has to in this moment, he does have the controls set from here and is going to indeed undertake an expedition again. Let's try and get to the next waypoint. I think because of the risks of this all, I'm not going to bother like trying to explore this waypoint or anything like that. Let's continue to be vigilant. Getting a strong hit. We're off to a nice start this time. So this time we reach a waypoint and we don't actually have any problems along the way. Let's see what kind of waypoint this is and see if we want to explore it or anything like that. But we're up to 4 progress. This time we find... Ooh, it tells me to roll descriptor and focus in order to determine what we find this time. So we get prominent mechanism. Ooh. This seems like it could be maybe some... like, prominent mechanism sounds to me like a ship that's been abandoned. Like it was maybe partly destroyed or something like that, but something that could be, like, if I want to really lean into my scavenger, this could be a derelict here. Just a mostly destroyed ship, and importantly, if we're really lucky and we scan this, maybe we can find, if it hasn't been picked over yet, which maybe it has, we don't know. Maybe it's got a power core in it. Because with seeing the word prominent, that suggests to me a pretty large ship on the scale of like at least what Emile is flying, or potentially longer, or potentially larger, which says, hey, maybe it's got the size power core he's looking for. Now we've got a few questions we need to learn first. We really need to scan this. First off, for a little bit more detail about this, let's consider this like a derelict and roll the outer first look. Oh my god, time or reality distortions is what I've brought up here. Which is, if I go with like reality distortions, that brings us back to, if you recall, the chaos crystal or chaos emerald, whatever I called it back when the thing that they were using to make food back on Cinder. Perhaps this has a similar kind of mechanism that's not contained all that well as well, which makes this a very dangerous environment to go into. So we're gonna have to decide whether or not this seems worth it. Let's find out a little bit more. We need to do some more gather information or something about like what exactly do we see here. We're gonna take the moment to really, because I think the fruit inside could well be very worth it. Like if it's got the power core, that is a huge step along the way towards making amends, just right there. We don't know it has one. We don't know how picked over or not it is, but we need to fly around a little bit and examine a little bit more, using whatever sensors we have to pick up everything we can about it. And so rather than do this as gather information, I'm actually going to do this, since we're in the middle of an exploration, I'm going to treat this like Explorer Waypoint, which is when you divert from an expedition to examine a notable location, which is basically what we're doing. We're examining it from the outside to find a little bit more about, is this worth investigating despite these reality distortions that are like flickering in and like just making the weird sort of digital glitch sort of look on parts of the ships outside. Telltale signs that something that needs to be contained in order to keep the distortions from happening is not being properly contained. So let's explore and find out what we can know about this. This is a wits roll. I don't think we have anything in particular that's going to give us any ads on this. Yeah, not that I'm seeing, so let's roll it. Getting a weak hit, which means I uncover something interesting, but it is bound up in a peril or reveals an ominous aspect of this place. Envision what you encounter, then take +1 momentum. I think in this case, it's obvious that uncovering something interesting is we know a little bit more about the state of this thing. So I think, actually, I'm going to be a little bit kind to myself here. I'm not going to go for the full on, yes, there's a power core, but it's in the thick of the reality distortions. I don't want to jump straight to that. We're going to go a little bit more mild, which is just, we can see that the hull of the ship is utterly cracked open. So like there's no oxygen in there whatsoever. You basically have to explore it in a suit in order to explore it at all. You need some kind of exosuit in order to be in there, or flying through on the inside, and this ship is too big to do that. We can see a little bit of the inside in order to find that, like, yeah, it does not look like this place has been scavenged yet. It does not have any of the, like, enough is in there that is, like, just kind of cargo and stuff that has not been picked over, that it seems like it's the ideal opportunity to pick it over as far as finding what you need, because nobody's gotten here first, but it is reality glitchy in parts sometimes, and we don't really have a good way to get inside right now oxygen wise. Now I'm going to check our gear for a moment to find out in this ship, surely there's some kind, like, we don't have a good like exosuit in the asset sense, but surely we might have some manner of way to at least do a spacewalk. And let's check our gear and find out if that's the case. Do we have such a suit? Rolling plus supply, which is full right now. Holy shit, a double 10 miss with a match. You don't have it and the situation grows more perilous, pay the price. With a double 10 complication and these reality distortions and everything, this is... Okay, clearly we get too close to this ship while we're in the middle of, like, considering investigating it, and I feel like something major has to come just bamf into existence as a result of these reality distortions. They like expand out beyond the ship a little bit more. I'm going to say, actually, it does not have to do with the reality distortion. It is just that at this moment, I want several heavily armed Vault Hunter ships to suddenly ping on the radar, like ping on the sensors, coming in, like they've come out of warp, just 1, 2, 3, 4, just a whole like armada of them come into view all at once. And there's this rudimentary computer voice that alerts Emile to their presence, just one after another, just new ship detected in proximity, new ship detected in proximity. Like it's always cutting itself off. And Emile's like, what the hell? And is able to pull up on these sensors, like all of these different ships, and is able and pulls up like that. They are clearly very heavily armed. This is dangerous as all hell. He doesn't know he doesn't know enough about the situation to know that these are all Vault Hunters that are after him, but is able to tell like they're not like a uniform fleet in that like they're not all flying like the same kind of ship or anything. Like they all seem to be in different ships, but they've all arrived at the same time, and it's a very intimidating sight. I think what Emile is going to do at this moment, while he has the opportunity, is I think he is going to try and pretend to be a shipwreck just like this other one. He wants to hide from their sensors, or like kind of hide within the shadow of the reality distortion. And clearly they've gotten to this spot, but we don't know if they've necessarily found him yet, or if they're just entering this sector. We don't know that they have necessarily found him yet. They may have just come to the sector in order to then chase him down. And Emile certainly doesn't know. So he is going to try and go stealth mode on this. He needs to do his best to pretend that he's a derelict. And in order to do that, he's definitely going to have to shut down all the power. But he wants to try and like drift closer to this reality distorting one, because if he does it just right, he might even look like just additional debris from the same ship. So here's what we're going to do. Thankfully, we've got a lot of momentum on our side, because we're going to do some stupidly dangerous shit here. Emile is going to try and fly this thing over pretty close to the reality distortions in order to just try and like fuck up their sensors so that they can't get a very clear image of exactly what they're seeing there. And because, actually, let's ask the Oracle. Let's find out this ship that's there. Is it bigger than Emile's ship? And I'm going to say likely, just based on what we determined about it being prominent. So I'm asking the Oracle with a likely, is the other ship, which we'll give a name to if we find out, is the debris ship bigger, like big enough that Emile could really be kind of like occluded by it if he got up close? Putting that as likely. Yes. Actually, it's barely a yes, though. We came in just under the wire, even on likely. But it is bigger. Emile would be able to hide that way. And so we're going to get right up on this thing and then try and shut down all the systems and just look like more debris. See if we can stealth our way past this, because they've come much more heavily armed than this ship. And Emile does not want to find out that they're indeed specifically hunting after him. So this is definitely a face danger. Is there any way that we can secure an advantage first just to get that little bit more momentum? What would we try and do to make preparations on this? Maybe if we best found out, like, we need to determine, like, the exact right amount, like, where's the best location where we can be right next to the ship, kind of close to where we see reality distortions, but hopefully far enough away that they don't actually affect the ship itself. So how would we determine that? Like, that, I'm certainly angling that as a kind of, like, expertise or observation thing, but what would that really represent? Maybe just, like, as we're flying over there, he's taking energy readings and calculating, like... Because in this world, perhaps that kind of chaotic reality distortion thing, it's not, like, completely unheard of. Their physics probably does account for it. There are formulas to be able to determine, like, the effect of its radius and, like, how... based on different amounts of shielding and stuff. So while he's flying over, he's analyzing energy readings and calculating just the right the place that he should be getting towards. So securing an advantage with wits. Let's see if you can figure that out. So if I burned momentum, I could turn this miss into a strong hit. Now the whole point of this was indeed building up momentum for the real move, so I don't think I want to do just that. But it does mean I fail or my assumptions betray me, which in this case I'm going to be relatively kind and just say I fail in the sense that there is not time to calculate that correctly before I get there. Like, I gotta do this quickly. We weren't that far away because we were relatively close to examine it. There wasn't time to properly calculate, so I've just gotta kind of go for it and hope. So I fail to calculate it in time. This face danger is going to be deception, stealth, or trickery. So this is going to be a shadow move. We're definitely going to need the... We're almost certainly going to need the help of the momentum here. Can't think of any other way that this... Any other real bonuses to it, so let's just see what we can do with straight shadow. Oh, man. We get a miss, and it is... The challenge dice are so high that my momentum can't help me. A 10 and a 9. I'm just glad it wasn't another double 10 complication. It came really close. It's a shame, too, because I rolled as best as I could. On a miss, you fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. Pay the price. So the way I'm going to interpret that, by a momentary success undermined by a dire turn of events, is... Let's do this Like, Emile is shut down. He turned everything off. He's sitting there in the oxygen mask again at the terminal in the med bay. And then suddenly, laser fire starts coming in. And it blasts into the side of the Stardust. We're going to withstand damage. So we are facing a damaging situation or environment? Absolutely. Let's see. Minor damage, serious damage, or major damage. They're from enough of a distance. And I don't think that they use, like, mega weapons or anything. Like, it's nothing too bad, just kind of some regular laser fire that we can definitely take some amount of. So I'm just going to call this minor damage for the moment. So I suffer -1 integrity, bringing us down to 4. We can choose to resist the damage by rolling plus integrity, and we've got a high integrity right now, so I probably should try and do that. Let's see. Yeah, let's see if we can resist this as we get plinked in the side. I've not rolled this move before, though I'm sure it's pretty much like every time we get hit with health or spirit or all that. Let's see. Okay, we get a weak hit, which means if your vehicle is not battered, we may lose 1 momentum in exchange for +1 integrity. I've got pretty high momentum right now, so I think I'm going to take that trade. The challenge dice have just been really high. 10 and 7 that time. I've not been able to do anything about them. So I'm still going to bring that momentum down to get that integrity back. So perhaps it's blasting all around the ship and making it clear, like, oh, things are swinging away from Emile. They see where he is, and he's all shut down right now. He's going to have to start powering systems back on in order to change this situation somehow. He needs to escape from here. Escape from them? Because he doesn't think he can take them in a straight fight at all. That would be, especially in a ship that's not especially outfitted with weapons. I think the Stardust has some, but... So I think we have a couple of options here. Basically, do we try and escape, or do we try and, like, screw them up in this situation by, like, reality manipulation or some kind of other bullshit like that? And I think that it's too much of a long shot and too likely to screw us over. I think Emile just needs to be able to jump out of here and lose them. He'll make a note on his map about where this ship is, so that maybe he can poach a power core later, but right now he just needs to survive. And he's lucky that he's not taking any serious damage. He's just been rocked a little bit, but needs to start calculating jump coordinates to get out of here. But I think in order to do that, he's going to have to lose them first. I don't think it would be fair to just, do a stealthy undertaken expedition now where I keep under the radar when you can't really do that until you're off the radar to begin with. So let's see, is there some way that Emile could, like, give himself cover or something like that? What are our resources? We know we've got a reality-distorting derelict nearby that may have some kind of things to use on it, but we can't really explore it very well. We've got the bright yellow sun and potentially Emile's ability to make an EMP burst. Because while, yes, the sun was the feature of the last waypoint, not this one, I do still think that we're near enough by that maybe we could leverage its influence. Oh, that could be interesting. What if Emile were somehow able to shut down their ships? I want to get back to the kind of, like, cool stunt and just, like, the type of stuff that you would put on the side of a van, set piece sort of thing. So Emile starts concocting a plan. He needs to shut down their ships. Now, he could lure them in. Like, if he can somehow make it take a spacewalk, he knows that the sun built up this EMP inside of him. If he were able to get over to their ships and, like, just EMP them, because as just, like, one person, he doesn't think he would even show up on their scanning all that well. Like, he'd be super stealthy in that process. His ship, they totally see. Now, the problem is they're already firing at it. So he's got a few things he needs to solve. First, he would need to... This is only relevant if he can indeed get some kind of ability to be outside in the vacuum of space. And we already know he does not have a ready-to-go space suit. Maybe he can cobble something together, though. Metal scraps and like maybe he can make himself kind of like an Iron Man suit that he's got oxygenated. Obviously not, it can't like fly around like Iron Man, but anything like that would take too long. Why don't we... Okay, I've got it. Maybe. Okay, so Fern, in our little scene earlier, anytime we've shut down the power and Emile has been on oxygen, Fern didn't need it. Fern doesn't need the oxygen. As an amorphous liquid, Fern might do better in the vacuum of space. What if Emile, with the oxygen mask on, got inside of Fern, who is then, could look like the blackness of space and like work to like blend in even more visually that way. And then they went over or otherwise lured them in until Emile could get into the right position and EMP blast. Fern could even we know that Fern was able to control Emile's like sensations when he was inside previously. Fern could have Emile have the right sensations of just what's actually out there. Okay. I love the idea of this. There are a few things that Emile is going to have to do to make this work. First off, this sounds super dangerous, and I feel like Fern is would not immediately be on board with this idea, as opposed to just something a lot, simpler. I think Emile would have to convince Fern to do this. Like, going out in space and everything, Fern would probably have to still have some amount of their form, like, just boiling off a little bit, just due to the pressure change. It would not be, like, completely unharmful to Fern, just less harmful. So, I feel like Fern would have to be convinced. Let's compel. And it would definitely be with heart, where charming, pacifying, or encouraging, or it's basically Emile just trying to, like Fern has often been gung-ho on the kind of cool adventure stuff, like always trying to check out through the cockpit and seeing flight. Like, as they've bonded over this time, Fern is into doing some good stuff. Fern has just also regularly been expressing the idea of like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I'm slow, and like there's just thing. Fern is quick to kind of judge themselves and judge themselves negatively. So a lot of this is Emile more just like giving the pep talk of like, no, don't you see, this is exact. He like describes what he wants, basically the way I did, about like all the ways that they could pull this off as he's talking it out loud. Fern in the room, looking very anxious about it all and expressing all of these ideas about how like I could never pull it off. Last time we tried to work together on an ambush like this, I failed it. And Emile is on the other side just trying to be like, no, this is perfect. This is the way that you can help me that nobody else ever could. We've got this. Don't you see? You're the perfect form for it. You can survive space. You can contain me inside and feed me all the right information so I can even see the right moment. You can magnetize us yourself towards the ship in order to get us in the right position. You can change your color to be... You're everything, Fern, don't you see? You're smart. You're resourceful. You're capable. Don't sell yourself short. You got this. And I'm going to prove it to you, if you'll just let me. And let's make that compel roll. So compel with heart says... Okay, we have a weak hit. I can't quite do anything with momentum to make that any better, but that's fine. So they'll do what you want or agree to your conditions, but their agreement comes with a demand or complication. Envision their counteroffer and take +1 momentum. So let's see, what's Fern's problem with this? What's the demand? Or what's the demand or complication? Oh, you know what? I think the complication is relatively simple. It's just indeed what I was saying. Like, it's not like Fern is perfectly suited to space travel either. Fern believes that it could happen for it could hold out for a bit, but it's slowly boiling off and stuff, and can't guarantee how long it would last. And so Fern indicates through their still rudimentary communication, demonstrates the symbol of like a clock ticking down, and like the idea of pressure and haste necessary, and shows itself like shows boiling, and like demonstrates the peril of this and the speed necessary. And so as a result of this, the complication is I'm going to immediately start this whole plan with like once they're actually out in space, they are going to be up against a clock. Whereas otherwise, Fern would have just been like, yeah, totally fine, we can pull it off, and that wouldn't have been the issue. So hurdle one overcome. Fern is on board with the plan. We already have oxygen. We know that that aspect is okay. So we could get Emile covered in the coating, and in fact, I think maybe that's what happens now. But obstacle number two, the problem number two is right now, Hyperion is being shot at. So I think in order to make sure that that in the process of this, they don't just utterly have their ship blow up and then they're stranded out in space, which sounds way worse. Emile's going to have to get this into a different position where truly, like, they'd have to get on the other side of this, like, derelict ship in order to, like, he needs to reposition so that they can't actually shoot at him. Not from this side. They'd have to go around or something. Actually, no, we already determined the ship isn't so big that he could, like, fly the Stardust inside of it. No, so we need to get a good stealthy spot, which I think we can just do as just a singular face danger with stealth. A singular face danger with shadow. We're just trying to reposition in a way that they won't be able to pick him up without getting super close. Perhaps getting all the closer to the... Like, he risks it all the more by getting ever closer to the reality distortions in order to, like... It's a little bit more of a risk of the distortions affecting his ship, but it makes it all the more likely that it'll throw off their targeting systems that are trying to, like, blast at his ship and just send them away, send them astray. Because that's probably how some of them are not quite hitting, but if he does that, he can maybe hide from them all the better. I don't think there's time to secure any advantages here. Let's just roll a shadow roll. Oh, I need to give myself the +1 momentum from the compel. Didn't do that yet. There we go. We're all the way up at 8. Let's face danger with shadow. Okay, so the challenge dice again came to... They've been rolling so many 10s today. 10 and 7 specifically, actually. Actually, in all the... I've rolled a double 10, a 10 and a 9, a 10 and a 7, and another 10 and a 7. That's not all the rolls I've done, but there have been a lot of 10s and high numbers today. Now, I could burn my momentum to bring this to a weak hit, which is probably necessary as opposed to just failing. So I'm going to do that. We burn all of our momentum because indeed, like, we have to get super close to this thing in order to pull it off. It is just crackling all over the place and weird, and like every once in a while these little like tendrils of unreality come like too close for comfort to the nose of this ship. And like that's but indeed the laser fire from afar starts getting farther afield and like just really having trouble, like it's farther off from the Stardust than it was even before. Because we succeed, but not without a cost. We make a suffer move -1. And in this case, I'm going to suffer spirit because Emile is really unsure about leaving it in this spot. It's working. His ship isn't getting blasted, but it's dangerous, and he's going to have to get, like, he's worried that it's too close. But he knows he can't afford to risk it otherwise. So we're going to take a -1 to spirit here because we are enduring stress. Just minor stress because there aren't like changes happening to the ship right now. He's just worried that they might. I am going to roll my spirit to try and resist it though. And that gets us a weak hit. So again, we could lose 1 momentum for 1 spirit back. This time I'm not going to take that deal because our momentum is much, much lower. So nothing happens. He's just... The stress of the situation is starting to build a little bit. He knows that he's about to do something really dangerous, but he also doesn't really see a lot of good ways out. This ship that he's in is not especially built for stealth. And in a straight-on fight, he would definitely lose against these people. He's outgunned. But otherwise, he's got the element ready to go. He just needs to shut down the power again to help out with the stealth all the more. And get the oxygen mask on and get enveloped. So those are the things that happen. He toggles it all down. Fern wraps themselves, he puts the oxygen mask on and gives himself a moment to steel himself just a little bit because he's nervous, and last time he was covered up with Fern, he's got a lot of bad memories associated with it. They have patched things up quite a bit as 2 individuals. However, this was a really scary time they were last in. And I think even Fern kind of races over as quickly as they can in their slow-moving kind of blorby form and starts trying to scoop up over Emile, and Emile's even just wait, hold on, wait, give me a second. And he takes some deep breaths and then eventually tells Fern okay, I'm ready. And then Fern subsumes him, but willingly this time. And Emile, he has his eyes clenched during it, and it's a weird oily feeling that he doesn't like, but eventually it's everywhere, and he stops. It's the telltale, he can't hear anything anymore. It's like being at the bottom of a pool, and that everything's just kind of muffled and distorted. But then it sounds regular again. And he opens his eyes, and it's this really disorienting feeling because his memory tells him that where he was and what just happened, but everything visually, Fern is doing a pretty good job of representing it as if it's still from his first person perspective, where he would be. It's everything looks and feels the way it should have been before he closed his eyes, but he knows that's wrong. And it's just so weird in the same way that so for a bit of insight into my life, I'm scuba certified. And the very first time that we were doing any training in the pool, when I had the regulator in my mouth, I'm breathing completely fine, right? But the very first thing we had to do, all we had to do was we had the tank on, we're in the shallow end of an indoor pool. All you have to do is just sit down in that pool with the regulator in your mouth. And I failed to do that the first time. Kind of. I mean, I was fine. My mind was freaking out at first because it did not want to accept that, yes, it was okay. You could just breathe with that. You're fine. You have the air in your mouth. You can breathe. It's okay. Even though I was breathing at the moment, and clearly I was fine, I was just getting, my mind couldn't take it, and I had to come up over the surface for a moment. And then I steeled myself and did it again, and it was fine. Before anybody else had even come up. I don't think anybody else even noticed that anything happened. But I needed to just stand up again for a moment before I could continue, because it was just too off from expectation. And I think that's what Emile's getting at first here. His heart starts racing a little bit, and I think because Emile is inside, once again, Fern takes a form here. Emile looks over and sees another character in the room with him. And it's not the captain like before. Fern's not trying to trick him. I think Fern gives themselves a human appearance because we've seen Fern likes taking on a humanoid form. Much as I want to get to all the stuff outside, I'm actually now really interested in kind of exploring the psychology of this moment a little bit more. Let's find out. It's like Fern's residual self-image from The Matrix, or just how Fern would look if Fern had complete control over that. If they were perfect control and Fern got to actually be just a regular human, what would that look like? And so I'm going to roll some character oracles for a first look on Fern's human form. Imposing, actually. Oh, that actually kind of makes sense in a way. Fern has been so down on themselves about I can't do it. Maybe this is a representation of how Fern Fern wants to see themselves as more capable and more intimidating. So Fern takes on a form, perhaps because of Emile's pep talk, as this this much more imposing person. I'm gonna roll first look one more time just to get a little bit more nuance to it. Haggard. That's an interesting pairing there. So perhaps this is a representation of how Fern is maybe really old. Has been around even for a Feroid, has been around for a long time. And so it's weird because Fern only recently developed this kind of human intelligence by taking on Emile's memories, but even still has lived a long life, and it's this very large formed, muscular, probably a human with no real clear gender, because I don't think Fern would have a lot of a grasp on a gender binary of which side they would come down on. They're not human, so they wouldn't really see themselves as male or female. So definitely a bit of an androgynous form that is rather large and muscular. But it's kind of counteracted a little bit by a facial structure that's much more kind of feminine and maybe a little bit bony, kind of leaning into the haggard nature. The body is very imposing and muscular, but the face is just kind of almost a little bit a little bit hollow and bony, and has a little bit of kind of just old age lines and stuff. Their hair is, I think Fern has a great love for a great appreciation for what you can do with styled hair, because Fern is unable to do that. Fern doesn't have any hair. And so I see Fern as having this really long, straight, still multicolored hair. It's got this kind of it's not rainbow hair in the sense of if you were to get kind of a mermaid dye in a contemporary sense. More that the color of the hair shifts in the same way that Fern's actual amorphous form does. And so it's these pulsing radiating colors that are down these very, very long, almost down to the floor, straight hair. But doesn't actually go down to the form, because it's wrapped around Fern's, there are strands of it that are wrapped around Fern's arms and swirling around the body and down toward, it kind of decorates their body with this shimmery rainbow hair. And Fern says to Emile, "You're going to be okay, Emile Spencer, because we're going to do this together. Just breathe. Breathe. Have you got it?" And Emile silently nods. Says, "Yeah. No, you're right. Let's do this." And with that, they're going to do a bit of a spacewalk. So we definitely need to try and secure some advantages before we pull this maneuver off. And as we know, they're up against a clock on this. So we are just going to make a relatively simple tension clock here. I'm going to make it a 6-segment clock. And this is just going to be, if they filled up this entire clock, then Fern would just be too harmed by space, too boiled by the pressure change to be able to keep either of them alive anymore. Emile would be exposed. And Fern it would be the turning point where Fern would have to just entirely bail on Emile in order for self-preservation. I would imagine that Fern is less able to manipulate themselves in the environment while also working on Emile's mind. It just takes a lot to be able to do that. So at the end of 6 segments, Fern would not just be fully dead, but survival instinct would cause Fern to abandon Emile, and then Emile would be out in the vacuum of space without any protection. So really dangerous. So Fern, survival instinct. So a 6-segment clock as they go out into space. So how are we going to represent this? They need to find some advantages to secure first to build up some momentum and get some +1s here. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn back time a moment. This is before they actually step out into space, but we'll say it's after Emile has been covered up by Fern. They need some better propulsion than just relying on the magnetism. That'll work well if things are close enough, but if they are stranded out in space, like, he needs some way to be able to propel them without that. So let's try and cobble together a device, like basically just do the Wall-E fire extinguisher thing. We need some kind of propulsion. So since we're currently in a spot where we're kind of safe from the laser fire, they're probably going to have to get in closer. Like, the other ships are going to have to get in closer to be able to actually hit him and, like, deal with the sensor malfunction. So while that's happening, while we're kind of waiting as they get in a little bit closer, Emile is going to try and cobble together a device, some kind of rudimentary propulsion system that could be like worn on like a belt that then has some like canisters on it that it could use in various directions to just kind of thrust around if necessary, using various of those just like chemicals that are on board and just like equipment to make the kind of the belt, and using what he has around in order to cobble this together. So let's secure an advantage with wits and see if we can make this ad hoc device. Okay, getting a strong hit on that. Wish I'd seen these kind of challenge dice earlier with a 2 and a 3. We succeed and take +2 momentum, and we get to add +1 on the next move. And in addition to that, we will now get a +1 when using this propulsion device. But of course, if we ever roll a 1 on the die when doing it, it is permanently broken, lost, or depleted. So we've got our propulsion device. Now it's back to the part where we're in space. I think what Emile is going to do now that we've got this kind of ad hoc propulsion belt, it's done around, we somehow like get it sort of on the outside of Fern. Like, it's a little bit awkward to wear, but it kind of works. And we're on the outside, magnetized against the current ship. And what Emile is going to do is just have them, like, using Fern to blast off of that metal, kind of shooting them towards one of the closest of the other ships, while Emile also uses this propulsion to just try and close the gap and get close to one of those other ships and get themselves latched onto it with Fern's magnetism to get them stuck onto that. So like, they wait a little bit while the ships get that little bit closer, but they're trying to get in to get that shot. And let's see, so we get a +1 from our device, a +1 from Fern, and a +1 from the secured advantage. So we have a +3 on this. However, I do think this is definitely about speed, mobility, or agility. So let's face danger with edge. Edge with a +3 though. Got a lot of things working together. So we fire off the side and manipulate this control, latching on to try and close the gap to another ship. And the dice say, all right, strong hit. Not too surprising with all those pluses. But I also, importantly, rolled a 6 on the action die. So our device is still good. We're successful and take +1 momentum. So Emile blasts over, manages to get their form latched onto the other ship. And now they're riding along with it as it's getting closer and closer. But so I don't have a vow about this, so I don't know that like I want to like go one. If I had a vow, I would like have to get every single one of the ships in turn, I think. But since this is all just part of a peril on the way to what we really want to do, I think we're going to try and do this as like a one and done thing. Now here's the problem. Emile does not have a way. He's trusting that the sun will eventually get this feeling welling up inside of him to be able to make the EMP. But here's the problem. Fern is indeed fully covering him right now. And just like before, perhaps that may be shielding him from too much of the effects of the sun in order to actually have it go off. I've got a couple of ideas. We'll see if this first one works. Now, there's definite danger with this, and it would definitely be an iron move, which I'm not great at, which is Emile would need to expose some of his skin to the sun to hope that makes the EMP go off, which would involve breaking this seal, which would expose him to the vacuum of space, which would, of course, be a real problem. So we could either do that, or we could try and get inside this ship so that he's in, like, an atmosphere for a bit, but then still hopefully at an area where he's like near a window and can like get affected by the sun a little bit more. What I don't want to do is just sit here and wait, because if I do that, I feel like that's just filling up the clock on Fern. Oh, no. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. So Emile and Fern, they start kind of crawling their way along the outside of this ship through magnetism mostly, slowly getting their way toward a shielded opening into a vehicle bay. This ship does have smaller vehicles that are like that it could launch from here. It's pretty big. Now it's got one of those kind of like energy shields that are keeping it sealed from the vacuum of space right now, that one could turn on and off. And I think what we're going to do is try and just get inside this thing, make it get kind of like a flicker so that we can get inside the energy shielding, and then when inside there, we can expose Emile enough to make EMP and shut down this ship and all of that. Nah, scrub that stuff. We're going to go with the metal version of this. Emile is going to first study this ship from the outside as best as possible to determine, like, what is the spot that if you had to do an EMP blast, like, this is where you do it to just shut down just the power to everything. And then they could, like, identify that spot so they can crawl to it and get in position. So this is going to be another secure and advantage with wits to just understand ship, like look at the identifying information and like anything that he can know about the ships from his just experience on the outside, identify where he needs to get to as best as possible. So securing with wits, not with the benefit of device or Fern or anything. Getting a strong hit. So I succeed and take 2 momentum, getting a +1 on my next move. And so Emile knows where to get to. He and Fern just start working together, basically crawling along the surface as this kind of this goo that's now blending in, camouflaged with the look of the outside of the ship, just like rolling along it smoothly as this like blobby but still human shaped thing. It's rolling along the outside. It gets towards like the top of the ship, like it's like the sun exposed side as it happens, near an area where it's like where there are just certain computer systems and power systems. It's still beneath like several layers of hull and everything, but this would be the spot. And we've got a decently high momentum now. We got a +1 on our next move. I think we're going to do the really dangerous thing here, which is we need to expose Emile to some sun, which means we need to break the utter seal that we have over his, keeping him out from vacuum, at least for a moment. This is totally going to be an iron move, though, because this is a face danger with strength, endurance, or aggression, as we just kind of like, he's like magnetized to the hull of the ship on the sun exposed side, thinking this all through with Fern, got the oxygen mask in, but like gives the signal of I'm ready, and then like some of the goo starts peeling its way back from around his back. You know, it's not exposing his face or anything, but there's just his raw back peeling back, exposed to space. It is a horrendous feeling right away. Just blood boiling and stuff. Like, it's bad. It's all the worst things about being exposed to vacuum. But he is feeling hopefully feeling the welling up inside as well of the EMP. He just needs to last long enough. So we're going to make this iron move with the +1 we just got from Secure and Advantage. I am not going to give Fern's +1 because, again, not about... Actually, yeah. No, I am going to give Fern's +1 because we're still benefiting from holding on. Like, Emile doesn't have to worry about holding on to the ship because we're still magnetized to it. So the mental manipulation is still helping us out. So I'll have a face danger, iron +2, and we have a miss. So we fail or momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events, pay the price. I think the simple one here is it's taking too long. Like, that alone does not do it. It's like only barely starting to well up, maybe because he just recently released an EMP blast and we still don't know exactly how this works. But it's taking too long, and I think the what I'm going to do as the pay the price is just we're going to fill in the Fern survival instinct. Emile is still okay. It has not yet hurt him in this process, but this alone has not done it. And we're eating up the time as Fern is boiling away and getting exposed to it all and everything. Let's see, is there something else we could do? Do we just do more? Because we have this clock, I'm kind of more okay than usual with just kind of... Oh, but we don't have... I don't have the +1 anymore. Even if I went at this again and again, I do want to change up the tactics a little bit. What could we do to make it kind of up the stakes? I mean, perhaps it would we'd have to expose Emile all the more. Yeah, so it's too small of a section that's being exposed as Emile communicates to Fern, like, because it's not even hurting him yet, and he's just like, I can take it. Open more. I need more. I'm not feeling enough fit well up inside. Just expose more of my body. Maybe it won't take too long. And so I'm going to try this face danger again, only with a +1 this time, because we don't have the benefit of the move from before. We just have Fern's help. But another iron move as Emile tries with even more exposed. And this time we get a strong hit with a match. All right, you're successful. Take +1 momentum. I didn't even have to burn momentum to do it. So clearly the match on this that I'm going to give myself is that the EMP, like, it exposes a huge amount of his body. He doesn't take any damage from it because it feels, being this sunlit, because last time he was inside of a ship, but now he's utterly out in space, getting all of this just direct bombardment of radiation, interacting with this whole weird thing, being stimulated by the yellow sun. I feel like his body even literally glows for a bit with yellow light, and like he takes on his own color, getting just supercharged by this energy, quivering by it, and then the release that happens is massive and takes out all four. Even though these ships aren't especially nearby each other, all four of these ships at once get hit by this huge EMP blast. All their systems go out, like it clearly knocks out this ship because it covers all of it, hits all of them, they all go offline and all of the lasers stop. Emile still just utterly coursing and, like, I feel like convulsing with this sort of power. And it's like long too, like just the amount of EMP that releases, it goes on in like several pulsing waves, and finally comes back in, and he comes to, and like his awareness is back to himself as he's surging with this sort of power that he's never felt before. And it's Fern that's in his imagination is there, like, because again, remember, Emile sees this as if like Fern's humanoid form has been doing this alongside him this whole way. I feel like they're even like in his imagination, like holding hands. And it's been like, that's the way that they're climbing along together. But now, like, Fern's imposing form in his mind is there just like shaking his shoulders while like crouched against the outside of this ship and just shaking his awareness back into him and telling him like, Emile, you've done it. The window is now. We have to leave. And Emile's awareness comes back and he turns his eye back towards the stardust, knowing that all he has to do now is cross that gap to get back and he could escape this whole situation. But whether or not he's successful at that, well, that's a question for next time. Okay, maybe it's just me and my filthy mind, but I don't know. When I was editing the end of this episode, those last like 3 minutes or so, I just could not stop laughing at how many things sounded like these incredible sexual innuendos. So here's what I ask of you this week. Somebody, please, if you want to be super cool, I want you to list as many of them as you can find. Like, write up a document with just every quote from the last, like, 3 minutes of the show. Everything in the EMP burst section. Or if you really want to, in the entire rest of the show, but I'm really just talking about the EMP burst section. How many things sound like, if you just take out the word EMP, that I'm just describing a filthy scene? Send me that list at starforgedpod@gmail.com. I do have a more traditional set of prompts for you, though. This one is going to be for a moment of shame, which, oh my god, no, I wrote that. I decided that before I did this part, and now moment of shame even sounds like some kind of sexual innuendo to me, but not what I intend. So anyway, the prompt is moment of shame. The action and theme are endure and humanity. So please, send me your ideas of a moment of shame involving endure and humanity, and maybe not the idea that I'm immediately thinking of right now after saying all this sexual innuendo stuff. But to be honest, you can send that idea as well. Send them over to starforgedpod@gmail.com. Let me know what you come up with. Good lord. This has been a long edit. Play me out, music.